Resilience can be defined as a person's capacity to cope with changes and challenges and to bounce back during difficult times. And considering you're all here for the Emerging Leaders program, you're well on your way. In this presentation, we'll be covering four main aspects of resilience building and how it's maintained. We'll be going over the RAS, understanding thought patterns, how to take a step back, understand thought patterns and the subconscious mind, and build resilience through goal setting. Our mind is hardwired for survival. We're bombarded by threats all day long, and our stress responses can be elevated. Resilience requires you to look beyond the evolutionary hardwiring for detecting danger and immediate threats and choosing to see what's worth living for. Mindfulness. We'll touch upon grounding and other tools for being present. Additionally, accepting that suffering is part of life, and although what we see on social media can appear polished and perfect, we can easily forget that it's not the truth. Focusing on what we can change instead of what we can't. Self-care and wellness. How lifestyle impacts physiology and how we respond to stress. Maintaining focus. How to change the way you live and work to alleviate stress and manage external factors. Understanding your mind and how thought processes impact your daily life is the first step of building resilience. People can easily become ensnared by their thought patterns, and if this persists, you can't fully be present. Through understanding your subconscious mind, you can take control of your mind and allow space for your goals to manifest. When you take control of negative thought patterns, you take control of your present and build your future. Throughout the next few slides, we're going to discuss the power of the subconscious mind in our everyday life, the reticular activating system, and the importance of grounding oneself in the present. The subconscious is filled with patterns that float up to the conscious mind. It's constantly running the program in the background of your waking life. When your mind is filled with negative thought patterns, you'll naturally attract people, situations, and outcomes that are also negative. If you learn how to create a new positive program, a new pattern in your subconscious mind that is built on positive energy and frequency of use, you're naturally going to cultivate more positive interpersonal experiences. Austrian neurologist and the founder of psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud, developed the topographical model, where he used the analogy of an iceberg to describe the three levels of the human mind. The three levels consist of the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind. The conscious mind is the top of the iceberg, the small amount showing above the surface of the water, with the subconscious lingering right below the surface, and the unconscious mind far below and representing a larger portion of this mind model. Freud described the conscious mind as part of our mental processes in which we're fully aware. You're awake, you make decisions on what to do for the day, make lists, and so on. However, the subconscious mind, or preconscious, consists of thought patterns and emotions in which we're not always aware. You can think of the subconscious as like a magic 8-ball of the mind. Thoughts and memories may occasionally float up to the surface and into the conscious mind, but overall it's a much larger supercomputer program constantly running in the background. It's there, but you're not fully aware of what's going on. Last, the unconscious mind contains much of our baser instincts relating to sex and aggression. Freud suggested that these urges don't completely reach our conscious mind as they're often perceived as unacceptable or irrational. What I'm suggesting based on Freud's model is that there's a way to manipulate our subconscious programming running in the background. When we consciously practice a behavior enough, such as learning how to drive, we automate it, which then it slips into subconscious programming. After the initial anxiety of learning how to drive has subsided and we've learned it, it becomes second nature and we rarely have to overthink it. Driving requires practice, the ability to look out for obstacles or danger, your own motor skills. This also applies to a variety of skills we've learned throughout life, but it certainly applies to developing a growth mindset and achieving our goals. Another aspect of reprogramming your thoughts includes understanding your reticular activating system, or RAS. Your RAS is essentially your conscious mind's filter for information. Your RAS is programmed by what you focus on and filters related information accordingly. Your mind is exposed to so much information from a variety of your senses that there's no way for you to truly take it all in. And that's where your RAS naturally steps in. You don't fully notice yourself doing this all the time, but you can start being aware of it right now. You can program your RAS to work in your favor to filter out information relating to your progress and goals. The RAS essentially works in order to filter information that validates your innermost beliefs. If you believe you're terrible at cooking, chances are your RAS is helping you cement that belief. If you believe that you're good at painting, for example, your RAS will continue enforcing that belief and assist you in becoming a better painter. Your RAS screens all this information to help you see what you choose to see. And while it works in assisting your conscious mind, it sets the running program for your subconscious mind. This type of hardwiring was useful during human evolution to focus on the movement in the tall grass rather than getting fixated on the clouds. So our RAS is not only wired to perceive threats, it's also overstimulated by everything happening around us, from geopolitics to pandemics to climate change. However, the argument that I have for rewiring your RAS is one for resilience instead of living in fight or flight mode. When we practice positive thought patterns and positive self-talk, we are programming our minds to focus on what's important. If we surrender the subconscious mind to negative thoughts and all external stimuli, we automate our lives to respond to negative stimuli and negative self-talk. From bad relationships to low self-esteem, the conscious mind has a large part in what feels like your destiny. In the following slides, we're going to talk through and walk through a few examples of how the conscious mind can change the entire system below the surface. When we practice mindfulness, which will be re-emphasized in the next session, we free up the conscious mind, which is often ruminating over the past or being anxious about the future. And we choose to focus on what's most important, the present, your full conscious mind. Getting past the ego to get a grasp on identity is imperative in resilience building, and we'll get to that shortly. But when it comes to self-perception and how it affects our RAS, or thought filtration, what we say to ourselves, our mantras, our self-talk, matters. Each year, Australia hosts an 875-kilometer or 543.7-mile ultramarathon from Sydney to Melbourne. This intense marathon takes 5 days to finish and is typically completed by athletes under 30 who've been sponsored by major corporations and trained specifically for this race. Typically, one runs the race for 18 hours and sleeps for 6 hours to pace oneself. In the early 1980s, a 61-year-old farmer named Cliff Young decided to enter this ultramarathon. He didn't have any major sponsors standing behind him, nor did he have expensive footwear or apparel. He showed up in clothing with holes, missing teeth, and tattered shoes. When he arrived on the day of the ultramarathon, everyone laughed. From journalists to spectators, people looked at Cliff incredulously, thinking that there was no way he could win this marathon. As the race began, all the sponsored world-class runners in the race left Cliff in their dust. Onlookers laughed at Cliff as he ran with his arms drooped by his side in a gentle shuffle. While the young runners raced ahead and slept for 6 hours, Cliff kept running. He didn't know he was supposed to sleep for 6 hours. When everyone woke the following morning, everyone was shocked to see Cliff way ahead. He didn't stop throughout the night. He was first across the finish line after 2 days and was awarded the $10,000 prize. However, this was never about money. Cliff Young turned right around and gave all the money to his fellow competitors. When reporters asked about his tactics, he said that he was sleeping 3 hours every 200 miles, which resulted in setting a record of completing the race 2 days earlier than everyone else. The closest runner-up was 10 hours behind Cliff. His secret to his extraordinary win? Cliff responded saying that he grew up on a farm that couldn't afford horses or tractors, and the whole time he was growing up, whenever storms would roll in, he'd have to go out and round up the sheep. His family farm had 2,000 sheep on 2,000 acres. At times, he would have to run after sheep for 2 to 3 days. He trained by chasing livestock around his farm with little to no sleep for days on end. What made Cliff exceptional was that no one told him he needed to sleep for a certain number of hours. He just showed up. Our own internal programming can stand in the way of being fully conscious or present. Cliff Young showed up to a prestigious race fully in the present, fully embraced who he was, and beat out every other competitor to their surprise. When fear dominates our present and future, it's because our RAS has been hardwired for fear as the focus. That fear stems from our own programming. If someone didn't tell you something was impossible, what could you achieve? What if you didn't tell yourself something was impossible? What could you achieve? When we take a pause and examine our mind and body, ultimately, each and every one of us must learn to change the negative patterns, the base metal of the human ego, our conscious mind, into the gold of our best and most resilient self. Realize that we have the power to not only change our subconscious mind through habit and persistence, but we also have the power to alter our future in dynamic ways in the middle of a sea of doubters and naysayers. You, like Cliff Young, can win the race of your life. In short, the subconscious mind can be trained to react differently and get us closer to reaching our goals instead of focusing on others telling us what's not possible. We self-regulate in accordance with our self-esteem. The power of words and the stories we tell ourselves can influence our own life outcomes, whether we're cognizant of it or not. But when we choose to explore and confront our own conflicting personal beliefs and fears, we can give ourselves a fighting chance. Feelings of inadequacy affect our brain's fight or flight response, our response to an acute threat to our survival, including nervous and endocrine changes, prepares us to react or to retreat. When a threat is perceived, the sympathetic nerve fibers of the autonomic nervous system are activated. Negativity rewires our brains, and even positive life experiences may have a difficult time registering because our own nervous system is bracing for impact. Surely there's a catch if something good's happening, right? Self-criticism and negativity root itself in our bodies and sometimes leaves us feeling as though we're not good enough. But this isn't true. You are more than good enough. And like certain habits and behaviors are learned over the course of our lives, we can also unlearn these negative patterns and move these roadblocks out of our way. In my time in the Army, I came to know someone who seemed to be a magnet for chaos. I had also come to know that they had a difficult childhood, one in which they were neglected and abused. They joined the Army to escape that abuse, only to find more of it, just in military uniform. The world is against me, they would always say. And just like that, another problem was on their lap. Their NCOIC would bully them, and they would say, "What can I do? The world is against me." Then they went on to marry prematurely at the age of 21 as a young private first class. Their spouse was relentlessly verbally abusive, and their home life spiraled out of control and into divorce. Their response? The world is against me. Nothing ever works out for me. And when they got out of the Army, they found a job where a civilian boss bullied them too. The world is against me, they said again. Now, I had no doubt that this person wanted to be happy, but the mantra was all wrong. If you really desire to move on and out of your own rut, you must sell it to yourself first. If you keep telling yourself the world is against me, you're going to send that message out, whether you're aware of it or not, like a bat signal. So when the young soldier kept saying the world is against me, lo and behold, it kept happening. It's definitely not magic, but it was in their belief system. They created their world from the words they spoke from within. You can also read more about this in terms of attachment theory, and if you'd like a few resources on that, just let me know. Negative cycles of ups and downs can make you feel alive, but once you let go of the cycle of destruction and focus on being your best self, you create space for the right people and opportunities to appear. If you find yourself basing your existence on being needed in your immediate environment before addressing your own personal struggles, you'll be more likely to repeat unhealthy patterns. You're accountable for the part you play as well, not just the unhealthy people who've entered your life. You deserve better, but you need to believe that first, or else those who don't have your best interests in mind will have a much easier time finding you. Forming new beliefs takes time and energy. But to shake yourself of any negative mindset, one must build an image that equates to success, but on your own terms. Think of your subconscious mind as the largest running program in your brain, and that it runs on your self-talk. Building your image through mindful, present-based thinking is a process of unlearning negative thought patterns. Habits are a learned behavior, so bad habits can be unlearned. With that said, be careful of the types of dialogues and words you internalize. When you believe that you are strong and resilient, it doesn't matter what other people say. Nothing matters so much as what you say to yourself. The negative words you hold on to and internalize may become your perceived truth and can lead to self-sabotage. Sometimes those close to you may not want you to succeed, so be mindful of the people you surround yourself with, as they may not have your best interests in mind. Be mindful of who you share your goals with as well. All the energy you invest in yourself is valuable, so be careful of where and when you spend your valuable time and energy on the external. Save your energy for the right moments and the right people. When we speak from a place of lacking and limitation, saying things like, I hope, I wish, I will, it leaves us speaking from a place of having no authority or say in our future. What we speak in our minds, we speak directly into our reality, whether we realize it or not. Words have power, and even more so, what we say to ourselves in our minds shapes the very world around us. When we create our self-fulfilling prophecy, is it of doom or success? When we take the time to take stock of who we are, what's important to us, we must also give ourselves compassion. While we can't undo the past, we can forgive ourselves now and move forward as better people. Have you given yourself enough compassion along your own journey? Now let's revisit the concept of using mindfulness in everyday life, from grounding and presence to accepting challenges are a part of life and looking at the present with intent via affirmations. If you've tried the grounding exercise in everyday mindfulness, or a grounding exercise in general, how did it make you feel? Have you tried something like it before? Presence not only matters in everyday mindfulness, but it ties directly into building and maintaining resilience. As a result, it ties into resilience and confidence that will help you survive, overcome, and thrive instead of remaining in survival mode in the long term, which can be both physically and emotionally exhausting. If you're feeling anxious or worried, grounding is especially helpful. You can use this as a quick cheat sheet in noticing the following around you. Start with focusing on 5 things you can see. Next, focus on 4 things you can feel. Then move to 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.